The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hey Hoopheads! Wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market, and they truly accelerate skill development faster than ever. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads Podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Also, make sure to check out the new Dr. Dish Home Machine. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Pat Baldwin, head men's basketball coach at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and you're listening to the Hoopheads Podcast.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering new subscribers 10% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code SAVE10 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its Playbank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball. Coaches, do you have a point guard or leader you're going to be counting on next season to run the show for you? Don't leave next season to chance. Thousands of coaches send their players to a point guard college camp each summer to learn to think the game, lead a team, and run the show. Your players will be smarter, better leaders, and better equipped to foster a championship culture next season in practice and in your locker room. I've seen firsthand how PGC camps have had a huge impact on players and coaches that I know, both on and off the court. You can go to pgcbasketball.com to find a 5-day, 4-night camp near you. That's pgcbasketball.com.
Our best players right now, when we play a regional opponent, they see all the film that we have on Huddle. They've watched 2 or 3 games already on their own of the opponent. So I got a special team when it comes to that. They know we're highly organized. They know we've spent a lot of time preparing for each opponent. And because they know that, we've got their attention. So they're going to execute the game plan.
Jason Mays just completed his 3rd season as the head boys basketball coach at Ashland Blazer High School in Ashland, Kentucky. In 2020, the Ashland Tomcats finished 33-0, ranked number 2 in Kentucky, and became the first team in Kentucky high school history to win 2,000 games. This past season, Mays led the Tomcats to the Final Four in the state of Kentucky. Jason was previously an assistant coach and interim head coach at Kentucky Wesleyan College after spending the 2 previous seasons at Valdosta State University of the Gulf South Conference. Prior to Valdosta State, Mays spent 7 years coaching alongside head coach Happy Osborne at Georgetown College in Georgetown, Kentucky. Jason also hosts the CoachMays.com podcast on the Hoopheads Pod Network. Make sure you check that out. If you're looking to improve your coaching, please consider joining the Hoopheads Mentorship Program. We believe that having a mentor is the best way to maximize your potential and become a transformational coach. By matching you up with one of our experienced mentors, you'll develop a one-on-one relationship that will help your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset. The Hoopheads Mentorship Program delivers mentoring services to basketball coaches at all levels through our team of experienced head coaches. Find out more at hoopheadspod.com or shoot me an email directly, mike@hoopheadspod.com. Our roster of shows is growing, so don't forget to check out all our other podcasts on the Hoopheads Pod Network, including Thrive with Trevor Huffman, Beyond the Ball, the CoachMays.com podcast, Players Court, Bleachers and Boards, The Green Light, Courtside Culture, and our team-focused NBA podcasts, Cavalier Central, Knuck a Few Buck, 305 Culture, #Lakers, Motor City Hoops, X's and O's NBA Breakdown, spanning the Spurs, LA Hoops, the Wizards Hoops Analyst, Lakers Fast Break, and At the Buzzer. We're looking for more NBA podcasters interested in hosting their own show centered on a particular team. Email us info@hoopheadspod.com if you're interested in learning more and bringing your talent to our network. Grab a notebook and take down some ideas as you listen to this episode with Jason Mays, boys basketball head coach at Ashland Blazer High School in Ashland, Kentucky. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads Podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, and we are pleased to welcome tonight to the podcast a very special guest, the head coach at Ashland Blazer High School in Ashland, Kentucky, and also the host of the CoachMays.com podcast here on the Hoopheads Podnet, Jason Mays. Jason, welcome to the Hoopheads Pod.
Hey guys, thank you for having me on. This is cool. You know, it's my, I think it's the first time I've been invited to do an interview on a podcast that I routinely listen to. So,
there you go.
yeah,
good.
You guys, I've got a lot of coaches in Kentucky listening to you guys, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm glad to be part of your family.
Yeah, we're having a blast, and like I told you before we jumped on, this is probably long overdue, especially with all the success that you've been able to have at various levels as a basketball coach, and wanted to get on and get a chance to pick your brain and learn some of the things that have been the secret to your success and then share those with our audience of coaches. We'll start by going back in time to when you were a kid. Just give us an idea of how you got into the game of basketball when you were younger, what it meant to you, and kind of what your first experiences were with the game.
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and a little town called Sharonville. I was actually there this past weekend for the first time in a long time and drove by my old high school. Princeton High School is where I went to school. And golly, what a massive campus that is now. And but, you know, grew up in Sharonville, northern suburb of Cincinnati. And my mom and my dad are both from Eastern Kentucky. They graduated high school, got married, and went to find work, and they moved to Cincinnati. So part of growing up with my mom and dad was you had to be a Kentucky Wildcat basketball fan. So I grew up thinking that Kaywood Ledford was just this uncle that I never had met that everybody talked about, who, for you guys who don't know, Kaywood Ledford was a longtime voice, quote-unquote, voice of the Wildcats, the radio announcer for all the Kentucky basketball games. And so I just grew up listening to Kentucky basketball in AM 1300 in Cincinnati and watching them on TV, and just was a big UK basketball fan.
Who was your first team? What was your first team that you remember?
I can remember all the 78. I can remember, I was born in 76, but I can still remember Kyle Macy. I can remember, the Rex Chapman years. I can remember Sam Bowie and Melvin Turpin. So, I mean, the 80s, really. I can go that far back.
The Goose Givens team.
Goose Givens, yeah.
Is the first. That's the first NCAA title game that I have a recollection of.
Lexington, Kentucky guy. Played at I believe Bryan Station High School, but it's Truman Claytor was a point guard in that 78 team. He was my camp counselor one year at Eddie Sutton basketball camp at the University of Kentucky in 1988. So, but just grew up a UK fan and started playing when youth league basketball when I was 7 or 8 years old, maybe even a little bit younger than that, 6 maybe. And I remember I was pretty good. It wasn't great, but I was pretty good. And I started giving free throw lessons in my driveway for a dime a lesson. And kids would come, and I'd teach them how to shoot free throws, and just neighborhood kids. And just over the years, I really fell in love with Rick Pitino when he first got to Kentucky, and what he did with those early teams, and the style of play that he brought to Kentucky basketball. So I moved from Cincinnati to Georgetown, Kentucky, which is a northern suburb of Lexington, when I was 16. So I graduated high school from Scott County High School. People probably know that from a basketball standpoint. They have one of the top high school basketball programs in Kentucky. And, thought, hey, I come from Princeton High School, and I'm going to come down here and show these Kentucky kids how to play. And little did I know that our team at Scott County would have probably beat Princeton by about 25. So, I broke my ankle And then I also broke the same foot 4 days after I got out of the cast. So my high school career in Kentucky, my junior and senior year, never really got going. I was good. I wasn't great. I played a lot of sports. I played water polo when I was in Cincinnati.
How'd you get into that?
Princeton had a really good water polo. We had a natatorium, had a pool on campus, and they had a state championship caliber water polo program. And we had a guy go to USC, guy went to Naval Academy to play, guy went to Long Beach State to play. I mean, they were good. Never could really beat Cleveland St. Ignatius, but played water polo, played golf, played football, played baseball, and just played a little bit of everything. But basketball was always my favorite. Moved to Kentucky, and I asked if they had a water polo team. They said we didn't know horses swam. So, it was, so I was like, okay. So I played golf and I tried to play basketball. I got injured. And bottom line was I was going to be the 9th senior on a team that I had just moved to join. And my high school coach was a great coach, Billy Ray Reynolds. And he said, look, you can do this if you want. What do you really want to do? I said, I really want to coach. So I actually, for one reason or another, there was some medical issues with some of the other coaches on staff. I actually got to coach, I don't even know if this was legal, some freshman games as a high school senior. He just went in there and he let me coach some freshman games, and I was a high school senior and just learning as I went and organized practices, and it was a blast. And so I wrote every Division I coach in the country and a lot of Division II coaches in the country asking to be a manager because I knew I wasn't going to be able to play. So I wanted to coach, and I figured I'll wash jocks and socks and work my way up, And I had a chance to go to Arizona when Lute Olson was there. St. John's, back when they had, remember Felipe Lopez was player of the year. I think it was 94. Yeah, 94. He was there. And LSU when Dale Brown was there. And so I was, I even talked to Indiana some. I talked to Bobby Knight, Coach Knight always let their athletic trainer pick their manager. So, and I was talking to Bill Kitely a little bit at Kentucky, the equipment manager for the University of Kentucky. But one day I'm in school. It's a cool story. I'm in history class, and this little short fat guy walks in named Happy Osborne. Now, for people who don't realize that name, Happy Osborne at the time was the assistant coach to Jim Reed at Georgetown College, an NAIA program in Georgetown, Kentucky. And Happy comes in and says, look, I hear you want to get into coaching. You're going to be our manager for the next 4 or 5 years. Hop in a car with me. And I was like, what? It was right in the middle of school day. And my high school coach was my history teacher. So he said, I got you, go. And I said, okay. So I just left school, got in a car with this guy I'd never met before, and he took me to Elkhorn City, Kentucky. Elkhorn City, Kentucky is about as far east as you can go without being in Virginia. All right. It's in Pike County, Kentucky. And there was a high school there called Elkhorn City High School. They had a player named Todd Conley. They called him Little Hef because he was about 6'2" and he weighed about 240 pounds. All right. Point guard, averaged 35 points a game that year, and was a candidate for Mr. Basketball. And Happy was going down to recruiting, and he was going to have an in-person visit. And so I was along for the ride this day. So we get there, and I get to sit in on the pitch. I was like, this is cool. We leave the room, and Billy Donovan and John Pelfrey walk in. John Pelfrey was his assistant. They were at Marshall at the time. They give their pitch. Then we got to go in and counter, and then they got to come in and counter. I was like, this is awesome, you know? And I knew who Billy Donovan was. He was this young go-getter, was at Kentucky, and he just got the job. And had this guy named Jason Williams that everybody was talking about, you know. And so 2 days later, Lil Hef makes this decision, and he picked us, you know. And we were tickled to death, and I got to be a part of that. I was sold. And my high school coach told me, he said, listen, you can go to Indiana, you can go to LSU, Arizona, St. John's, and you could be I know how you're going to work. You can be the best jock washer they've ever seen. Or you can go right over here to Georgetown College, which was where Scott County High School was. Scott County High School is where the city of Georgetown is. And he said, you can learn to coach right away. And they're going to give you the opportunity to do that. And so I said, that made a lot of sense to me. So I enrolled at Georgetown College and was there. I was on a 5-year plan. I think I graduated with more history hours than any other history major in the history there. I was focused on basketball, and I double majored in history and political science and loved every bit of it. While we were there, I was a student assistant, and then we hired more student assistants, and I had more and more responsibilities. And I was doing scouting and recruiting and on-campus visits when I was a sophomore in college. I was breaking down film as a freshman. They allowed me to learn, actively participate. And I was a copious note taker every day in practice, and I was hooked. I knew this is what I was going to do with my life. So at the age of 21, I was offered my first job, and it was at Maine Central Institute, which at the time was a prep school. They don't have a program anymore, but back before everybody had a prep school, every street corner in the country had a prep school. The prep school league that everybody recruited was the New England Prep School League. They're the boarding schools, the traditional boarding schools, and Maine Central Institute was the best. I mean, they were good. They were coached by Max Good, who used to be the head coach at EKU. At the time I went up there and accepted the job, I was going to be the intramural director and run a dorm. They had DeMar Johnson. They had Karan Butler, Avery Queen. They had 12 players sign Division I scholarships. In every game that I was part of, there was an NBA scout watching Karan and DeMar. Karan ended up having a great career at UConn, and then in the NBA. DeMar went to Cincinnati, played for the Atlanta Hawks. It was incredible. Well, Coach Good ended up leaving to go with Billy Bano to UNLV, so my opportunity was gone. So late summer, I ended up landing an assistant job at St. Catherine Junior College in Springfield, Kentucky. It also doesn't exist anymore. And so I was 21 years old, and I was a paid college basketball coach. A lot of kids nowadays, they go the GA route, and I dove right in as a full-time assistant and just worked my way up mainly through small college ranks. Spent many years at Georgetown College. Won a national championship in 1998 there, played in several Final Fours, had 27 guys signed to play pro ball from there. Then in 2006, our son was born, our first child, and he was born with complications, and it was scary. He's perfectly normal now. He's a great little athlete, great student, great kid. But he didn't want to live on his own there for a while, and I panicked, and I got out of coaching. I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to be a good husband. And I was all basketball for so many years, and I was very prideful, and realized that it took that to wake me up. That experience with our first child being born, realized that I need to be a better husband to my wife, and I'm not prepared to be a great father. So I got out, and I was a financial advisor for 7 years in Lexington, Kentucky, and realized that I'm allergic to money, I guess, is what I tell people. And I got back in it with the support of my wife. And then I'll finish this up real quick, is my wife, she was principal of an elementary school in Scott County, and I got a job offer to go to Valdosta State University, 10 hours away from Georgetown, Kentucky. And she said, you need to be a coach. And for the next 3 years, I commuted away from Georgetown with my wife and 2 kids. We have a daughter as well, chasing this dream, getting back into college coaching. I spent 2 years at Valdosta State, and I spent 1 year as the associate head coach. And after 6 games, our head coach resigned for medical reasons, and I became the interim head coach at the winningest program in Division II history at Kentucky Wesleyan. Just like most interim guys, you don't get the job when you're done, and I didn't. They didn't retain me as the full-time head coach. So I was faced with a choice. Do I go, back? Do I continue to live away from home, or do I sort of change? And I knew I wanted to coach, and an opportunity to coach at Ashland Blazer High School came up, and here we are. My wife works in the district as an administrator, and I'm a teacher. and I'm the boys basketball coach at Ashland Blazer.
That is a saga of travel, of learning, of being at different levels in different areas of the country and different places and different experiences. And there's two things that jumped out at me from the stories that you told there. First question is, what was it about coaching that right from the very beginning grabbed you? Because we've talked to on the podcast, people usually fall into one of two categories. They're either somebody who, from the time they were young, even while they were still playing, they always knew they wanted to be a coach. And then there's another group of people that are players. They get done playing, and now they look around, they're like, oh, the game is going to be over. How can I stay in the game? And then that's how they come to coaching. And it seems like for you kind of always had it in your head that you wanted to be a coach. So what was it about coaching initially? If you can think back to that first experience or that first desire to be a coach, what was it about coaching that attracted you to the profession?
Well, I can articulate it better now than I could when I was figuring it out back when I was in high school. But I think God's blessed me with the desire to make an impact, have an impact on people. And so why not try to have an impact on people while you're guiding them through something that they're passionate about? I mean, I had an impact on people as a financial advisor, helping them guide their retirement planning and their estate planning. But, I mean, that's an important role. It's a very important role. But, coaching high school, which is what I do now, or coaching college, you're influencing 14 to 18-year-old kids, 18 to 22-year-old kids at the college level. I mean, those are the times of their life when your impact is as important as, Don Meyer says it's as important in some regards as the parent's role. John Wooden has said that. Billy Graham said one of the greatest mentors a young man or a young woman can have is a coach. And so why not have an impact on another person through something that you're both passionate about? And it was, basketball. And so and then I found out you can actually make money doing this. Oh, I'm all in. I've never been a guy that's really chased the dollar. I probably have made mistakes in that regards. I sort of, my marriage is awesome. I love my wife, but there's been times where she's like, boy, I should have married the other guy I dated in college, I mean, but it's always because you're mentoring someone else through the game of basketball. God's given them an ability to run, to jump, to bounce a ball, to shoot a ball through a rim. And you can take that opportunity as a way to develop them as people. And I mean, I think it's one of the highest callings there is.
Absolutely. I think you said it best. And I don't know if I've ever heard it expressed quite that way, but when you said that you're able to have an impact with people who are doing something that they're passionate about. And I think that's true. We don't all get to be able to do that depending upon what your profession is. Just think about being a financial advisor. No matter how passionate you are as a financial advisor, the odds that your clients are going to be passionate about their finances, I mean, sure, everybody cares about their finances and wants to do well. But as far as like getting down into the nitty gritty of what investments they're going to make and what the numbers look like, there's a reason why they're hiring a financial advisor. It's because they're not passionate about finance. Whereas with a basketball team, you have kids, hopefully, that do care about it and do love it and are passionate about it. And as you said, if you can do something that you're passionate about and the people that you're leading are also passionate about, man, that's a win-win. And I've never quite heard it expressed quite that way. And it really hit home with me. The other thing that came out of your story for me is you talking about your wife. And it's something that we've talked with other coaches about in terms of what, how a supportive spouse, how important that is for you to be able to have success as a coach. So when you and your wife got married, did she know what she was getting into in terms of the life of a coach prior to marrying you? And then how did you guys go about having conversations as you're going through your career while you guys are married?
No, she didn't know early on, but how was she supposed to? I mean, when we were seriously dating and even into our engagement, she thought it was the craziest thing she's ever witnessed in her life. You know, what, you're going to Birmingham and back in the same day, and you're home at 4 a.m. and you're up in the office at 6:30? You know, well, this is stupid. You know, and she didn't understand it at first. No one does. Any sane person, you know, that gets to see behind the scenes of a college basketball staff, they're like, this is crazy. You know, this is not logical. All to win a basketball game. You know, the 98% of the 99% of the people in the world, they wouldn't get it. They just don't. And so, but once she started seeing the relationships that were involved, not only with the players but with the coaches, and you know, she was athletic as well. My wife is a 3-time world champion clogger. You know, think Irish step dancing, except, you know, it's not the Irish. You know, she was really successful, and she's in the World Clogging Hall of Fame. She was a very successful, not only cheerleader, but cheerleading coach. She coached college cheerleading, coached high school cheerleading, coached middle school cheerleading. And she's very athletic herself and was very competitive. She was Little Miss Hemisphere, and she was in pageants. And so she had a competitive drive. It was just different. You know, it wasn't basketball. She I think played 1 year of youth basketball, and that was, you know, it was more of a story you tell over dinner to crack jokes at it. You know, she never took anything seriously out of it, but she didn't know at first. But I think once she started seeing back to the impact that I was having, and then that she could have on these kids, and as being a part of it, you know, I think she got hooked. And I mean, our kids here at Blazer love Miss Lori Beth. You know, my wife's name is Lori Beth, and I mean, they love her. They think she's the sweetest, most positive person, and I think she's ate up with it. You know, and she's a cheerleader at heart. So, but without her, I mean, let's go back into the details here, Mike, for a second. Picture this. I mean, I was a financial advisor. She had just got a job to build a brand new elementary school and become the principal at it. Dream job. Get to hire 100% of the staff, certified, classified staff. Dream job. Okay. And I come to her, and this was also right after her father passed away, who was a really, really good man. And I said, honey, I want to get back into coaching, and I got to do it 10 hours away. And I know you can't move because you just took this job, and we're grieving the loss of your dad. Terrible timing on my part. And for her to say, I trust you, I agree with you that you need to, I mean, what wife does that? You know? And so I'll never forget the morning, 4 a.m., I got a loaded U-Haul, and I'm leaving for Valdosta, Georgia, and I'm looking at my kids and my wife crying on the doorstep in Georgetown, Kentucky. Like, what is Dad doing? I mean, it was so risky. And, but without her support, there's no way that it would have worked. And, we did that for 2 years. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have a really cool place to live down on campus that helped out financially. I had a school car, I had a school phone. So, I mean, there were things that, you know, it just seemed like God put things in our way and along the way for us that made that journey easier, which also allowed us to have faith in that journey. And then, you know, Happy Osborne, who I'd worked with at Georgetown College all those years, he was now the head coach at Kentucky Wesleyan. So he called and said, look, I'm going to retire in a few years. I want you to be the associate head coach, and let's get this thing on the way to where you could take over. You know, hypothetically at the time, nothing's guaranteed. And so I said, hey, I'm coming home, but now I'm only going to be 3 hours away. So she still stayed in Georgetown with the kids as I did that in Owensboro, 3 hours away, another time zone away. I was Central Time Zone. And so it was really 3 years of coming home once every 14 days for 28 hours, 32 hours, and then being gone again. And that's not sustainable for anybody's marriage. So that's when we had to make a decision on what we were going to do. And that's when changing into to become a high school teacher and a high school coach. But you're right. If it's not without her, if it's not for her support, none of this happens. None of this happens.
Yeah, I think it's so true that you have to have your spouse on board. And if your spouse isn't on board with it, then I think it very, very quickly becomes not very much fun, even if you're having fun within the confines of your team or your practices or your coaching. If you have an unhappy family waiting for you at home, it just takes away, obviously, the joy that you might get from the basketball side of it, because clearly, as important as the basketball is to all of us, our families are even more important. And when you don't have that good balance and everybody's not on board, it makes it really, really difficult. And the number of coaches that talk about having just, my spouse is the MVP of our marriage, because they have to sacrifice a lot in order for a coach to be able to do what they're passionate about. And certainly it sounds like that's exactly what you have. Hey, coaches, parents, and group leaders. I want to introduce you to our newest sponsor, SnapRaise. SnapRaise is the nation's largest digital donation platform built to help teams, youth groups, and clubs raise money quickly and efficiently without selling products. SnapRaise builds your group a customizable campaign website, and students use their mobile devices to connect and engage with their biggest fans. My son's high school team used SnapRaise this season, and our team raised all the money they needed to fund their season, and then some. Getting SnapRaise started is quick and free. Just visit snapraise.com and you'll get connected to a local SnapRaise expert in no time. Next thing I want to ask you about is 2 transitions. So first transition is, what did you learn in your years as an assistant coach that have made you a better head coach? And it could be in relation to how you utilize your assistants or something in that realm, or maybe it's just something that you picked up that you feel like helped you become a better head coach. And then the second thing, after we talk about that, we'll talk about the transition from college to high school. Let's focus on the transition from assistant to head coach first.
Well, I was fortunate to be in assistant positions where the head coaches gave me a lot of responsibility. I'm 45 now, Mike, so I don't think I'm old, but I sort of, in college basketball staffs now, if you're an assistant at 45 years old, you're the old guy on staff, So, when I was young, I got thrown into doing all kinds of responsible, you're in charge of this game scout at the Final Four in the NAI national tournament against, David, at the time they were David Lipscomb, University, now Lipscomb University, or, hey, we're playing Belmont, you got the scout. I'm 22 years old. Well, are you kidding me? Against Rick Byrd, I knew he was a good coach. I didn't know he was going to be a Hall of Fame coach, I just, in recruiting, and Happy, Coach Reed, I was under Coach Reed as a manager for 2 years. Coach Reed, lost his life to lung cancer in 1996. So that was a cool experience, having to transition from a coach who was well respected in the NAI Hall of Fame. And then, that tragedy happened where, Coach lost his life to cancer. And then the assistant, who had been there for years, Happy, takes over. And, we didn't really miss a beat. We won a national championship under his guidance and lost in the national championship game in 96. And so he trusted this young, energetic, because Happy was like, look, I'd rather call you off than call you on. As long as you bring the juice every day, you're going to mistake your way to mastery, And, I tell people all the time, mistake your way to mastery. And I was allowed to do that. I was allowed to do that. Today, I think a lot of young coaches, they're sort of boxed into, all right, this is the fence that you have to stay in your job. So they become really good at anything that's inside those parameters. And when they, try to get a job outside of those parameters, it's, okay, you got to relearn, got to retrain. It was everything from equipment management to practice planning to recruiting to game prepping to, we had the largest team camp in Kentucky. We had 1,200 kids at our team camp using 13 gyms, providing transportation. They all stayed on campus. That's a logistical nightmare. Just running camps. And so I was fortunate. And it wasn't just Happy at Georgetown. Coach Helfer at Valdosta State, really trusted me to sort of turn around recruiting there at VSU. And they had won 10 games the year before I came. And we go 17-10. And then the second year, when we had, a full-fledged recruiting class underneath our belts, we were 26-5, 26-6, and set an all-time wins record in program history. So, and with the number 2 seed in the NCAA South Regional. So again, he trusted me, and he gave me a big plate. It said, "Fill it up, and just get it all done." And so I was fortunate there. And then at Kentucky Wesleyan, you want to talk about opportunity. Hap obviously trusted me. So when I was the assistant there, he said, "All right, you're in charge of recruiting and this and that." And I was still figuring a way because I didn't get the job there till late in the summer. And then when he resigned after 6 games and we were 1-5, and you're named the interim coach,
Good luck.
So again, you mistake your way to mastery, and in that season alone, man, I could write a book on that season. All the mistakes I made in dealing with players and dealing with my own ego, and acting like a head coach rather than being a head coach, but still acting like an assistant. That time, there's just all kinds of nuances that I would have done differently, but no one trained you for that. So, and I didn't recruit any of those players. So as an assistant, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of responsibility. And I learned that the best opportunities that we have in life, it's not just in coaching, often become responsibilities. And so, an opportunity to be in charge of a Final Four scout or a national championship game scout, that's not an opportunity anymore. That's your responsibility to get it right. So you throw yourself into that because you don't want to let your players and your head coach down. So I think that was the key. I had a lot of leeway to make mistakes because I had trust from my head coach when I was an assistant. And so I try to do the same thing now in our program here at Ashland Blazer. We have 4 assistant coaches. And, we delegate certain responsibilities to them all. But our associate head coach, Ryan Bonner, I throw a lot at him. And, sometimes he'll ask me a question. He wants me to answer it. And I'll say, just figure it out. And that's the best answer I can give him, because that's how he's going to learn, the best is by mistaking his way to mastery.
Is that hard to do as a head coach when you know that ultimately the staff, the team is being judged? You're being judged. You're the person that's being judged. The assistant coach is not ultimately being judged. So one of the things that we've talked a lot with coaches about is how, especially early in head coaching careers, coaches tend to they tend to micromanage because they're control freaks. They want to control every aspect of what goes on in the program because they are so invested in it. And as coaches mature and go through their career, they start to realize what you just talked about, which is I have to be able to give up some of that responsibility and delegate some of those tasks that I might have done myself earlier in my career, because then you get more buy-in, you get more ownership, whether it's from the players, whether it's from your staff, whatever it may be. So when you first started looking at being able to do that, how hard was that, or what was your process for maybe internalizing or thinking about how you had to delegate in order to make your program a success?
I think a lot of times you have to flip how you look at the roles you have as a coach. And what I mean by that is put yourself in a player's shoes. And so if you're going to run a certain offense, and put yourself in a player's shoes, and okay, what would I think of this offense? And a lot of times you'll sit there and you're like, this doesn't make any sense, And as a new head coach or as a young coach, I think this is what you were alluding to earlier, but I think a lot of young coaches and a lot of new head coaches feel they have to prove that they're right. And so that's where the control comes in, that they don't want to give up, because they feel if they give it up, it is a sign that they don't know what they're doing. And eventually you learn that the exact opposite is true. When you give players leeway to figure things out on their own without you giving them all the answers, or giving them, you give them control, that's when trust is earned, and trust is everything. We do something here at Blazer that's really cool, and I never planned on doing this. But there's times, I probably do this 5 to 7 times a season, where it could be where we're not playing well, or it can also be where we are playing well. But in a game, I'll give a certain player the timeout, and I'll tell my staff to get out of there. I said, let's let him have it. So we got a player who's going to be a senior this year named Cole Villers, and he's got Division I offers and good player. There's times I say, Cole, you got the timeout, and at first he's like, are you serious? Now he's like, okay, I got you, and he'll go in and they're listening to their peer, but I mean, that's giving up control. I mean, you're letting a 17-year-old kid have control of a timeout during a game. Are you kidding me? But that's just a small example of trust. I'm giving him trust, and in turn, because I've given up control and trust in him, he's going to trust me back. And I think a lot. I would have never done that at Kentucky Wesleyan when I was a first-time head coach. I'd have never done that. When I was a young assistant at Georgetown College, I yelled too much. I gave myself headaches every practice because of my intensity and my just raw emotion. And at the end of the day, it was because I wanted the players to hear my voice so I could prove to them that I knew what I was talking about, I was prepared, and I was right. And you know what? Players don't really care if you're right or not. They just want to know that you care, period. So that's just something that, you could sit here and you could talk about, but as a coach, you've got to go through that journey of self-discovery yourself and get to that point. And we all have different DNA. So, we're all different as coaches, but as I age, I realize that, micromanaging really doesn't work too well.
It's really hard, I think, to reflect on that when you're young and you don't have that perspective. And I think as you get older and you get more experience and you come to realize that, as you said, I don't have to be right. I've already proved myself. And I think part of it when we're young, and I know I can speak to this for sure, that when I was a young coach, you felt like you wanted to be good, but you didn't even really necessarily know what that even looked like. At least I didn't. And as confident as I was as a player, the transition for me going to coaching wasn't that easy. And I don't know if I didn't have the right, I don't know if role models is the right word, but I didn't have somebody that kind of sat me down and helped me. My first job as an assistant coach, I was with 2 older coaches, a guy who was a legend here in the state of Ohio, Rich Voyers, who was close to the end of his career. And then there was another assistant coach who was also far, far older than me. And those 2 guys were kind of focused on their varsity team, and they helped me along a little bit. But I guess I always felt like I was maybe not as confident as I could have been. And conversely, so then I'm always having to, as you said, always having to prove myself. And so then I think that when you talk about being able to delegate, I didn't realize what that ability to delegate looked like until I became an assistant coach for the varsity team at the school where I teach now, underneath Phil Schmuck, who we've had on the podcast. He's a head coach at Twinsburg now, but Phil just was fantastic as a head coach, and he gave me some of those responsibilities like what you talked about, where he'd step out and he'd say, all right, Mike, you take this drill, or Mike, you take this timeout, or Mike, I've got a meeting after school with such and such a parent or with an administrator. You take the first half hour of practice. And there's times looking back on it where I know that he just stepped out, not because he needed to really step out, but because he was just kind of giving me that responsibility and helping me build credibility with players. And that's not easy to do, again, when your name is the one that's in the paper. My name was never going to be in the paper as an assistant coach, win, lose, whatever. The pressure wasn't on me. It was on him. And I think as head coaches, we have to be able to, you have to come to accept that. And then when you do, that frees you up to be able to delegate that responsibility like you talked about for sure. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between coaching in college, coaching in high school. What's the same? What's different about the two experiences?
Well, you can't recruit in high school, at least public high school. So
that's a whole other podcast.
Well, we're laughing about it, but here's what I mean. In college, if you can't recruit, you're not going to win games. I mean, it's just recruiting is the lifeblood of any college program. I don't care if you're at a non-athletic scholarship school, you still have to recruit talent, and it's so important. It's so important. And, I was talking to somebody during the NCAA tournament this year. I think it was some of my assistant coaches, and, you're watching TBS or True TV or whatever channel, all those games are on in the first 2 weeks of the NCAA tournament. You're just flipping back and forth and you're watching these teams play, and it's just a culmination of all these efforts. But it all started with recruiting. Somebody identified a kid, somebody developed a relationship with that kid, and then they worked it. And recruiting is an art and a science. You have to be organized in your approach and your process. That's the science of recruiting. But you also have to be meaningful and real in the relationship development in recruiting. That's the art. And the coaches that get both aspects of that are really, really great recruiters, and they end up becoming really good coaches because they end up having good relationships with their players. That really doesn't exist in high school. So you take that huge part of the college game and just throw it away. I'm not on the road. I'm not in airports. I could tell you the best place to take a nap in the Atlanta airport right now. I could tell you which Dunkin' Donuts on Interstate 65 and 75 are open past midnight. I could tell you which rest area it's okay to take a nap in and which one it's not okay to take a nap in. Why? Because recruiting, the work you put in. None of that exists in high school. Okay. And we all know in high school most coaches teach as well. So you don't, and I actually had college jobs where I had to teach, some classes, but that's not a common thing. But from a holistic standpoint, from a 30,000 foot view standpoint, I think the things that are the same, let's talk about the comparisons. You're dealing with 14 to 18-year-old kids in high school. You're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds in college. Max Good, Maine Central Institute. Guys, most recently was the coach at junior college in Kansas, but before that was at Loyola Marymount, was at Bryant up in Rhode Island, and was at assistant to Bano at UNLV. Great basketball mind, unbelievable basketball coach. And he said, I don't care if it's high school or college. It is, you realize that your job depends on the consistent behavior of, if I'm a high school coach, 14 to 18-year-old kids. If I'm a college coach, your job depends on the consistent behavior of 18 to 22-year-old kids. And do you realize whether they're 14 to 18 or 18 to 22, it is consistent for those kids to behave inconsistently. So good luck with that, and so that's the same. They're still figuring things out. In high school, they haven't left their home. They're still dependent. In college, they've left their home. They've gained some independence, but they don't know what to do with that independence for the most part, at least for the first year or so. So there's all kinds of nuances in how you mentor the 14 to 18-year-old high school kid versus how you mentor the 18 to 22-year-old college kid. Basketball-wise, it's an interesting question as well. I think simplicity is genius in basketball, but there's different ways of being simple in college. You can do some more things in college than you can in high school. My first year coaching high school, I had way too much stuff in offensively, way too much. And we didn't do anything great. Now, my play sheet is a fourth of what it was 3 years ago. Defensively, we pressure, we're man to man 95% of the time. We triangle in two, but we do man to man pressure principles out of that. We press some, but that's it. I mean, we're pretty much simple. We don't allow middle. We force everything in, and you can that's the same in college or high school. It's just you have to teach it a little bit more simply in high school. The other thing is, and I'm still not great at this. I'm not very good at figuring out. I want to be a better freshman and JV coach right now. I haven't got the rhythm that I want to have as making sure that my freshmen and my JV kids develop. That's something, because I never had to do that in college. In high school, you've got 3 teams. You've got a freshman team, at least we do in Kentucky. You have a freshman team. You have a JV team. Some of the freshmen play on the JV team, okay? And then you have a varsity team, and there may be some freshman kids that play on a varsity and JV, and there may be some JV kids that play also on the varsity. So we try to have a focus on player development at those younger age levels on the freshman and the JV teams. This year, throw it all away because of COVID. It was all a mess. But I'm still learning how to do the best job I can with my freshmen and JV kids. That's one of the things I'm going to take a deep dive into this summer and figure out, okay, what am I not doing well? And what am I doing well? And how can I make the experience of those kids better in our program? Because you never have to worry about that in college.
Do those teams practice? Do you practice those teams at the same time? Do they all have different practice slots? How do you guys do it?
Different. It depends on your numbers, but our freshmen always practice separately, and the majority of their practice is skill development, which is why our 2 youngest coaches on staff are very good skill development guys. For that reason, they coach the freshman team, and the JV will have last year they had separate practices. This year they didn't, because most of the kids that started on JV were also on our varsity, so they were going to be in that practice anyhow. So I think it depends on your numbers. A larger school, we have 940 kids at Ashland Blazer. If I'm at a school that has 2,500 kids, all 3 practices are probably separate, because you're probably going to have a dedicated JV team with not much crossover on the varsity team at a school that size. So it just depends based on your numbers. But so schematically, I think you got to keep things simpler in high school. But I'm going to tell you one thing here on that note. High school coaching is way better. Now, when I was a college coach and I would speak at clinics and I would recruit kids, I always said the lip service of, man, we love high school coaches. You guys do great. No, let me tell you something. Now, if I was a college coach now, I have a totally different respect for high school coaches. Totally different. High school coaches are unbelievable. You don't know what you're going to have from one year to the next. So you've got to figure out what are you doing schematically on the floor? What are you doing personnel-wise? How are you changing rhythm in a game based on the kids that you have in your program that you have no control over? It's just based on where their address is, Whereas in college, you can recruit kids to a system, or you can go recruit the best and then change your system to who you recruit. So, high school coaches, man, it's very pure. And man, there's some really good coaches in Kentucky at the high school level. Unbelievable coaches, Mike.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think when you look at coaches that, I don't care what level, you can start in the NBA and you go all the way down to 2nd or 3rd grade, and you just see some coaches that are meant for the level where they coach, and they're great coaches at the level where they are. And that's a high school coach, that's a college coach, that's an NBA coach. And I'm convinced that if some of those coaches could be successful at any level, some of those coaches are just so ideally suited for that particular age of kid or player. Like you mentioned it before, it's different to mentor an 18 to 22-year-old than it is a 14 to 17-year-old. It's a different way of interacting. There's different expectations. There's different things that need to be done. Some people can adapt to both groups. Some people might be much better served at one level or the other, and everybody has to find their niche. But I think the point that you're making is there is great coaching at every single level of the game. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in the best coaches are the ones at the highest levels of the game. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. And I know you're saying the same thing, that that's not true. I think about some of the guys that we've had on the show here that coach at the Division III level that nobody outside of their immediate geographical region probably has even heard of. And those guys are some of the best coaches in the country when it comes to X's and O's and dealing with players and building relationships and all the things that we talk about today that are important to great coaching. So when you think about being a coach that can have that kind of success at whatever level it is, and you've obviously been at the college level and you've been at the high school level, and you talked about some of the differences between the two up till this point, what's something that you love about high school basketball that was not a part of your college basketball experience?
You get to see all their first moments. When you coach a college kid, you didn't see his first dunk. When you coach a college kid, you weren't there when he got his driver's license. When you coach a college kid, you weren't there when he had his first date. When you coach a college kid, you weren't there to ask him how prom was. When you coach a college kid, there's just so many. Those college kids have already had those aha moments, those first moments. High school kids, man, you get to witness those. You get to see them grow up. And so, like, we do some little corny things. Like, I always post pictures of kids when they get their driver's license, standing next to the car. That's a big moment. I mean, Mike, do you remember when you got your driver's license? I bet you do.
Absolutely. It's a big moment.
Yeah.
It's a big moment.
So, I don't know if you ever dunked, Mike, or Jason. I don't know if you ever dunked, but you remember the first time you dunked,
I don't. I wish I did.
But
I wish I did.
You get to see all those moments, and you get to see them at the high school level. You get to see them think they have all the answers, and then you get to see them realize that they didn't have a clue what they were doing. And they're more open to being corrected. At the college level, man, and this is worse at the highest levels of college too. The higher level you go, the worse this is. Man, there's just a lot more entitlement because you're dealing with kids that have always been the best or been told that they're the best. And, the egos are one of the reasons why they're successful is because of their ego. But, man, you've got to manage all that from an individualized standpoint. And it takes away from the team concept. At the high school level, you can really focus a whole lot more on the collective unit of a team and not get bogged down in this, individual's personality and this individual's discipline issues and this individual's academic issues that take away from the team. So I tell you what, now in high school, Mike, you have to deal with parents a lot more, which I think if done transparently and you communicate early and often, set clear expectations, is a wonderful thing. Don Meyer always said, parents are key. And so I think we do a good job of that here. And I'm not saying every parent we've had has been happy. I mean, parents are emotional when it comes to their babies and their playing time. We all know that, okay? But you got to manage it. In college, you didn't have to really deal with any parents. That's a big difference too. I mean, you get a parent that comes in boiling hot over playing time, fine, here, you can have a scholarship back. See you later. You pay for school. I mean, in high school, you can't, you owe the parent more than that because they're still active in that child's life. And even dealing with the parent, that we have kids that come from great families that have taught them really good decision-making skills in our program. I know we're blessed because we just got great families in our program. So when I get them, I get to supplement that a little bit from through basketball, and their parents trust me to do that in the right way. In college, a lot of times, I can't tell you how many kids that we had that didn't have great family backgrounds. And so you were sort of that father figure or big brother figure for the first time in that kid's life. And in high school, at least in our program, it's a lot more solid from a family background. So there's different dynamics for sure, but you get to see all the first moments, man. It's pretty cool. We got a really good player. We got a point guard. It's his name is Colin Porter. He's really good. He's a class of 23 kid. And, we got another guard named Cole Villers. He's going to be a senior. Another guard named Ethan Sellers is going to be a senior. And all three of these kids have girlfriends now. And, it's just my wife and I, we enjoy sitting back and asking them about their dates. And now they're even going on double dates, and it's just cool, man. It's neat. In college, you don't get to do all that.
All right. So have they grown up together in the community and played together since they were in elementary school? Because I always think that, especially when you're talking about public school basketball, that's one of the things that if your high school coach is involved in the youth program and those kids have grown up playing together, you're able to develop such a camaraderie. And there's just this feeling of we're a team before we even are a team, if that makes sense. Whereas in college, you're kind of having to rebuild every year. You lose your seniors and guys come back. And I know it's the same thing in high school, but when you're in that public school environment where kids have had the opportunity to grow up and play together from the time they're in elementary school, I just think it fosters that team feeling and that feeling of being connected. Do you see that on the high school level there in Ashland?
Yes. And here's why. Our situation is going to be a little unique for most. Everything in our school system is linear. And what I mean by that is there's 5 elementary schools that feed into one middle school. That one middle school feeds into one high school. So as the basketball coach, the same could be said if I was a football coach or baseball coach, okay? You have an impact. You have the ability to influence the Ashland Youth Basketball League players that start when they're first graders all the way up till they come to high school. So that's a cool thing. Last year, we were 33-0. We finished the season undefeated, ranked number 1, number 2, depending on what poll you look at in Kentucky, and never got a chance to see if we could win a state championship because of COVID. 4 of our starters grew up since 5th grade. I think they had all played together. So there was a synergy there that trumped anything I could do schematically. Anything I did schematically, anything I did X and O wise, anything I did execution wise, anything I did in practice supplemented the biorhythms, if you will, that they already have with one another. And you can't teach that. You can't coach that. You can't. It's just when you see it, it's a wonderful thing. I think that's one of the things when you watch these AAU tournaments that you don't see any of that. Because you got kids just showed up on the weekend to play a game to hopefully, do well and get 22 and 10 in front of a college coach. There's no synergy. There's no roles being defined and played on AAU teams. This past year's team, we didn't have as much of that, but because of this year's team and the growth process they went through, we ended up being 22-5 and went to the Final Four in our state tournament. Next year will be better because of it. The team that won the state championship this year, Highlands High School in Fort Thomas, in Northern Kentucky, Fort Thomas, Kentucky. Those kids all grew up playing together. So I think that is a tremendous strength. Teams that have always played together, they are hard to beat because they are so together. And it's sort of hard to put a metric on that, but you know it when you see it.
Hey, hoopheads, we all hate ankle sprains, and they happen way too often. Ankle injuries are the #1 sports-related injury. Arise is trying to change that. With the iFast, your athletes get preventative protection and full mobility. Athletes no longer need to wear bulky braces that limit performance and give mediocre protection. Anyone playing sports should be using these products. Keep your athletes in the game. Don't wait for them to get hurt to take action. Visit www.arise.com/team pricing to learn more. That's ARYSE.com. So how do you structure the youth basketball program to make sure that you're fostering exactly what you just described?
Well, that's a great question. I think a lot of high school coaches need to explore that. I was fortunate enough when I was out of coaching, one of the things I did as a volunteer in a volunteer capacity was I served on the board and eventually was the chairman of the board of Georgetown Scott County Parks and Recreation. And I was part of a baseball league. It had almost 750 kids. And, Scott County youth basketball and baseball and softball and soccer and football. So, you really get to learn about youth sports and the organization of youth sports. And that was really good for me. Now, fast forward to 2021, I'm a high school coach in Ashland, Kentucky. Let me tell you some of the things we just did. My first year here, I didn't want to rock the boat. So I just sort of observed and watched what had already existed. And we had a very strong and have a very strong youth program because we had committed adults that were running it and guiding it, that had played at Ashland, that had graduated from Ashland. And they wanted to leave a legacy to the younger generation and make sure that they enhanced their experience coming up through the ranks. So it was a beautiful thing. What we just did is we I don't know the right word to use here. We reorganized our board. Okay. I thought we had too many coaches on our board. I thought we needed more parent volunteers on our board because during the season, what's a coach focusing on? He's focused on his team. We need more parents that are volunteering their time, that are putting time and effort in to, help and run our league. So we reorganized our board. We're in the process of redoing and redrafting our bylaws for our 501c3 and getting all that cleaned up. We have our school district renovated, put about $800,000 into an old gym called Alumni Gym. That was the old Ashland High School gym. And they renovated that gym. And our youth, AYBL, just spent $16,000 on new backboards, adjustable backboards, and rims for that facility. So now we can host tournaments there of all age groups. And that's sort of our new hub. So these young kids have a place to call home. And we have increased our enrollment numbers even during a COVID year. This year in AYBL, we had the same amount of numbers as we did last year pre-COVID, which was out. That tells me that next year our numbers are going to be the best they probably have ever been. So the more kids we have participating, I think is a good thing. We're growing our girls aspect of that. I think that's important. And I just think you have to be present. You have to take, but when you have to take a role, but you don't have to be in charge of everything. That's key. You're the local basketball coach at the high school. Don't be in charge of everything. Don't dictate everything because you're going to get burned out and people following you are going to get burned out from following you. Okay. And something's going to slip because you're not going to have the channel capacity to make sure it goes right. You're going to be, you're not. So get a bunch of people on board that want to do the right thing, want to invest in kids, and then get out of their way and just be present and be available. But then go focus on your team because if our team is playing in a state tournament and makes it to the Final Four, or if our team is 33-0, that is the best thing that we can do to motivate a 7-year-old to be a good basketball player. He wants to play for the Tomcats.
So true.
You know what I'm saying? But if I'm going 15-15 every year, but I'm down there and I'm dealing with drama over this coach, this referee, nobody wins in that. So get the right people not to borrow a line from John Gordon here, but get the right people on the bus, get them in the right seats, and then get out of their way and watch it flourish. But you got to realize what you're accountable and responsible for. Make sure that you have integrity on your board. Make sure that the money is being handled properly. Find alternative sources of revenue, off-season tournaments, AAU tournaments, youth leagues, adult leagues, church leagues, all run through your youth basketball league. And just be there, man. Be present. Have your team handing out trophies on Championship Sunday, and jump in there and referee a game. I coach a team. I coach my daughter's here. We do it by elementary school, so I coach my daughter's the Hager Wildcats. Last year it was a second and third grade team. Get in there and coach a team. We do coaching clinics for our coaches. They're nothing major, but just be present, but get out of the way and let good people spend their time and talent on making your league strong. Don't micromanage it. I think that's key.
Yeah, you just hit on two things right there at the very end that I was going to ask you about. One is, do you get your varsity players involved in the program, which to me I always think is critical when you start talking about, hey, we go 33-0 and there's nothing stronger that makes a 7-year-old want to be part of the program. I think there's that. And then I think the other piece of it is they have to see the players as human beings that they can look up to. If they have a relationship with those kids, now they want to come to the games. Now they want to be like those kids. And eventually that leads to them working hard so that they can be a part of the program. So to me, that's key. And then the second thing that you talked about was putting on a clinic, and just how you help, again, not run the whole thing, but just how you facilitate to make sure that the things that you want being taught to your players at those younger levels are being taught. And again, it's just like you talked about simplicity going from college to high school. There's simplicity in going from high school to a youth league, but there are, I'm sure, some things that you would prefer to have those kids being taught as opposed to some other things that we've all seen. Anybody who's been at an AAU tournament has seen a lot of, questionable coaching, let's just put it that way, in terms of trying to teach the game the right way and to prepare kids to be able to play high school basketball. So I just thought it was interesting, again, that right as you were wrapping up the answers to the question, you answered the two questions that I was going to have for you going forward. Let's jump ahead from the youth leagues to what you do with your varsity team. And tell me a little bit about how you organize your program in terms of what are the standards that you put in place that you believe need to be there in order for your teams to be successful? Do you have a set of 4 standards? Do you change that at year by year? Just how do you organize your program?
I think coaches can't be scared to have a mission statement for their program and ensure that they live by it. Now, we don't preach it from the hilltops, but our kids know it. They have to know it because it's a big wall wrap as you walk in the locker room every day. And it can be summed up by this. Here at Ashland Blazer, we want our kids to have confidence, composure in class, confidence to obtain what they set out for in life, composure to realize that adversity doesn't stop you from succeeding. It just makes you, it should increase your desire to succeed. And then class, no one's going to remember the thing that happened. They're always going to remember how you reacted to the thing that happened. So, that's our mission statement. And our 3 keywords are, confidence, composure, and class. And then we break that down. We have a vision for our program. It's called the Culture of Champions. And it starts everything from understanding our mission, okay, and then our standards of behavior. Everything from the tongue reflects the heart. So our language, how we treat women, how we treat our teachers, how we treat our peers, how we treat other fellow student athletes, how we treat our parents, how we treat officials. We talk about how we treat officials, and our vision statement is we want our players to have championship experiences while they have personal development. So it's championship experiences, personal development. And that's why we incorporate a lot of, last year it was Dr. Kevin Elko, a sports psychologist, and we did his virtual training and really sort of learned about language and talking to ourselves and our culture and how our language that we use in our program dictates our culture. This year we did Kevin Eastman's series, and so we always pick something out. We do leadership development. We're active with our team chaplain and devotions and things of that nature. And then as you get closer to picture a triangle or a pyramid, as you get closer to the peak of that, I think you start to see a player-led program, and that's where the culture transfers from the upperclassmen to the lowerclassmen. And we're seeing that. And when you get to that point, that's when you start having a culture of champions. And so we've been here 3 years as a staff, and we've made the state that we've won our region. In Kentucky, there's 16 regions. Thus, the winner of each region goes to the KHSA, the infamous KHSA Sweet 16. Keep in mind, in Kentucky, there's no classes in basketball. So it's all, the smallest can beat the biggest and vice versa. And we've won a region in each of the last 3 years and went to the Sweet 16. The first year, we won a game and made it to the Elite Eight. Last year, we were 33-0 and didn't have a chance because of COVID. This year, we won a region and finished 22-5 and made it to Saturday morning, which is the Final Four. So, I think we're getting there, and we're doing things the right way. And obviously, it helps when you have talent. But so forget about the talent. It's the culture. And I know that's an overused word in coaching right now, but it's the environment. It's the locker room. It's the bus trips. It's the parent meetings. It's the strength training sessions in June and July. All that stuff. And you have to be consistent. And it all goes back to making sure that these kids are learning what confidence, composure, and class means.
So how do you recognize when kids are living up to those things that you want them to do? Do you have a formal way of recognizing kids who live up to those 3 words? Is it an informal thing? How intentional are you about recognizing when you see a kid exhibiting composure, or you see them handling a defeat with class, or when you see them doing something in the school that reflects your culture? How do you go about recognizing that?
Well, I mean, you know this, Mike. I mean, when you talk about standards, you are what you accept, okay? So our standard here needs to be a championship standard. So if you are, and this is just my opinion, okay? There probably be a lot of coaches that disagree with this, that rightfully so, they come from different high school backgrounds, coaching backgrounds. But if you're stopping to acknowledge and reward a kid for living up to your standard, I don't know if that's the right way to be, because your standard is exactly that. To steal a line from Saban, your standard is a standard. It is what it is. It takes what it takes. You expect that, and so they should see each other. Our freshmen should see our seniors, our sophomores should see our juniors, and our managers should see our players, and our players should see our managers, all living up to the standard of having confidence, composure in class, doing things the right way. How you do anything is how you do everything. Having unity over self. If they see each other doing that, they'll all buy in. So I don't have to stop and say, Hey, Cole, you did a great job today being nice to a student in your math class. Your teacher did. Now I may stop and say, hey, I got a nice email from your math teacher. Said you helped a student. Good job. I'm proud of you. Privately, but I don't do it because we expect that. That's our standard. So I think you've got to be careful singling guys out for doing the right thing that you expect them to do anyhow. That's just my opinion. Now, what that creates is what do you do with the kids that aren't doing the right thing? And so we don't have a book of rules. I don't have a notebook. I'm not a notebook guy. Don Meyer, I've seen all his notebooks. I've got them. And I couldn't keep up with it. All right. We got one rule. Don't do something that's going to require an apology to your team later. That's our one rule. And I also take discipline issues all on a per player, per case basis. Because kids are different, man. You can't just over generalize. This kid may live with his grandparents and have trouble getting to practice on time, and it's not his fault, okay? Versus this kid, he's getting to practice on time because he's leaving his girlfriend's house too late, and in his brand new, car he just got. Those are different kids in different situations. So I think as a high school coach, you have to be careful with just lumping all your kids into one. Here's our rules, here's our standards. You have to take everything on a case by case basis. And our one rule is don't do anything that's going to require an apology to your teammates later.
Yeah, it's very simple. And clearly it's maybe, hard to define or easy to define depending on how you look at it. But you know it when you see it. And I think that that's a great way to be able to set things up. And as you said, I like how you answered my question about recognizing kids who are living up to the culture by saying that it's what you expect. What's what we expect you to do. And I think that there's something to be said for that, whether you're a teacher. I think about that from a parent perspective. There's certain things that I expect my kids to do because I expect them to do it because it's what we do and it's the right thing to do. And I'm not going to stop and praise them every single time that they do what's expected of them. So to me, that makes a ton of sense. And I can see where once you get that rolling, that you now have, as you said, that leads to having a player-led team where the upperclassmen enforce that standard with the younger kids, and everybody just comes to know that, look, if you're going to be a part of our program, this is what you're going to do. And it's just the way it is because it's been that way, and everybody who's a part of it enforces it. And if you're not going to live up to that, then you're not going to be a part of what it is that we're doing. So let's jump from sort of the culture piece of it. Let's talk a little bit of basketball quick before we get towards the end of our time here. How do you put together, when you're thinking about day-to-day, putting together a practice plan, just tell me a little bit about your practice planning methods and how you make sure that you're maximizing the practice time that you have your kids out on the floor.
I spend 2 to 3 hours on every practice, just planning. That's the truth. Meticulous to the minute. And it's everything is planned out. Now there's more days than not that I don't get to something, or I go over on a drill, or I get through a drill quicker. But I spend early in the season 2 to 3 hours. In February, I'm spending about an hour to an hour and a half just planning practice on my laptop, on my Excel spreadsheet, and making sure that we're doing what we should do. I think it's important. I mean, listen, we had 53 practices this year in a shortened season due to COVID. And so if you knew, Mike, that you had 53 opportunities to become good at something, why would you not make sure that you're going to really focus on each of those 53 opportunities? Because if that's all you had, then by golly, I got to be sharp when I'm done with those 53 opportunities. So I think practice is I enjoy planning for practice. I enjoy practice actually more than I do the games. Players don't, and I did when I was a player. But as a coach, practices are everything, man, everything. We film our practices. We have one of those huddle focus cameras now, so we can watch our practices. Our players can watch practices. And I don't film everyone, but I do early on in the year. But we're a 2 hour, 2:15, 3/4 of the year practice. We'll practice for 2 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes for 3/4 of the year. And then this is something I've changed as a high school coach. In February, I'm going about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. But about 60% of our practices are defense, mainly half-court man-to-man. I'm a firm believer that if you're going to win a championship, you're going to have to stop people with your half-court man-to-man defense at the end of the day. And then about 30% is going to be working on offensive execution. And then about 10% is going to be special situations, side OBs, out of bounds under, rebounding, short clock stuff, ATOs, things of that nature. But it also depends on your team. Like next year we're going to have a bunch of guys back. I'm going to lose 2 guys, and one was our backup point guard, the other one was our center. So they're going to know what's going on. So, but if you got a brand new team, you got to do practices differently. So it depends year to year. But I spend a lot of time on practice. We do individual breakdowns, and it also depends on where you are in the year. My October 15th practice is going to be a lot different than my February 15th practice. So we don't spend a lot of time on opponent game prep in practice. We do film-wise, we do scouting report-wise, very meticulous on those 2 aspects in game prep. But in our practice time, it's mainly spent on us. Even day before game kind of stuff, it's mainly spent on us.
All right, I want to come back to that. I want to ask you something about the defensive piece of it, and then I'll ask you a little bit about the scouting report and the film with your kids. When you're working on defensive things during practice, what does that look like? Is that breakdown drills? Is that small-sided games? Is that 5-on-5 where the focus of what you're doing is on the defensive side of the ball? Just explain maybe just a basic philosophy of what you do when you're working defensively.
Well, man-to-man, half court is where we hang our hat. So we want to choke all reversals. We believe that if you choke a ball reversal, it takes away the oxygen to an offense. It smothers it. We don't want any middle penetration from the wing or the corner. We want everything to go to the short corner, not baseline, short corner. We don't want to give up the baseline. We want to cut it off, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's from exaggerated help side. But we don't want anything going to the middle. So our closeout stances are different. It takes a while. If you have a new team in our defensive system, they're not going to be very good at closing out that way until January. It takes a long time because you're breaking up years and years of habit. So our closeouts are important. Do a lot of closeout drills. Then we do a lot of help drills. And yes to all that. We'll start with 2-on-2. Then we'll go to 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 and 5-on-5. But, our 2-on-2 drill may be, we do a neat little drill where it's just 2-on-2. The guy that doesn't have the ball has to stay outside the 3. And so, you're just focused on basic one-on-one closeouts and help side on the drive. And then when he kicks it out, you're closing out on that, and the other guy's getting off the ball. We do a thing called drop drill. It's a 3-on-3 drill where you're working on your help side rotation, your drop down weak side rotation, and then if they skip out, what we call Xing out and getting your closeouts and talking and communicating. Then you obviously have your shell drill. Shell drill, I do very little of. I do a one-man shell where they got to go through 5 different positions of, when we deny, our shoulder is in the passing lane. That's how hard we deny. We don't give early help from deny. We give early help from what we would call help 1. So if the ball's at the top of the key and you got a wing and you got a guy in the corner on the left side of the floor and the guy penetrates to the left, I'm not giving early help from the wing. I'm giving early help from the corner in help 1. And I may not even give early help there because I believe at the high school level, we're going to make you take a tough 2 outside the backboard frame. We're not going to let you have a bailout pass to the guy I gave early help from. Why? I'm going to make you finish a shot one-on-one. You're not going to have that kick out, which is different. It's very different. A little bit of Chris Beard there, a lot of Max Good. I know I'm a Max Good guy, but that's where I got that from. Old school Bob Huggins, I love watching Texas Tech. Mark Adams, I think, is a genius in half-court man-to-man defense. But, no choking all ball reversals, deny all wing entries, shoulders in the passing lane, no early help from the deny position, no middle penetration, exaggerate your help 2. Where we want to be ball side lane line. That's how far over we are. So we just drill all that because it's hard, but it causes the other team to react to us. They become reactionary because of our actions, and that's the name of the game. So,
how do you teach defensive communication?
You do that in your drills. But here's the thing: we say a few things. Part of our language is speak the obvious. Okay, speak the obvious. Think about that for a minute. What do you see? Talk what you see. Speak the obvious. I got a ball. Hey, I got your back. Ball's in the corner. Hey, I got help side. I'm dropping down. Hey, hedge, screen right. I'm hedging. I'm trapping. Just speak the obvious. Speak the obvious. So, in every drill, has its own language. So if I do a drop drill, we're talking about making, we're going to say, I got your back. And so he's forcing the dribble to the short corner, and he knows he can be aggressive in that because he's hearing his buddy saying, I've got your back. So if he does give up a straight line drive, help's there. And then the guy is confident in helping on that because he hears his buddy saying, if you go, I got you. If you go, I'm dropping. If you go, I'm dropping. If you go, I'm dropping. He hears him. So what it does, it builds confidence all the way back to the guy that's on the ball. Think about that. It's just
it makes a ton of sense.
It's just
it really
layered
does.
communication. So speak the obvious. And then if you do a shell drill, you're calling out your position. You're calling ball. And we have main staples like, when a guy picks up his dribble, a lot of people go dead, ball, dead. We go, and that is instant. We're already in the passing lanes, and we don't want any bailout passes. So, we're always yelling kills, 3 stops in a row, stuff like that. We got common language. We're no different than anybody else. But I think each drill has its own language, and that's how I tend to look at it.
Yeah, that's really key. I think that the common language piece, and then I think the teaching your kids what the drills are so that they know, so that every time you go into it, you don't have to give them an explanation of, okay, this is what we're doing. Remember when we did this? It's got a name. Everybody knows it. And you just get so much more efficient with practice. I wanted to go back to ask you about, you mentioned how you're not spending necessarily a lot of time on opponents out on the practice floor, but you did say you're spending time with the film and you're spending time with scouting reports. So obviously you as a coach and as a coaching staff, you're putting a lot of time into that, watching film and being able to put together those reports. How much time do you actually spend with your players watching film of a particular opponent? So let's say you're preparing for a league opponent. How much film of that league opponent are your kids actually watching? And then what does the scouting report that you give them look like? How much time do you expect them to interact with that scouting report?
Probably a little different on this. Scouting report, let's work that backwards. Scouting report is going to be about 12 to 15 pages, and we don't give it to our players. That's 100% for our staff. Here's why. Players ain't going to read it. They're going to only retain about 5% of it. Okay? So I'm going to make sure I control the 5% that I need them to retain on the whiteboard and in film. So the scouting report, why do you do all that work if you're not going to share it with your players? Because the players have confidence and trust in us. They see that scouting report. They know that we are prepared. Because they know we are prepared, they're going to listen to what we tell them. The second reason we do it is we got to make adjustments in the game. So the team that makes the best adjustments is going to be the team that's the most prepared. So my staff has got to be prepared to say, hey, let's do this, or get ready for this after this timeout, or get ready for this. They just scored on this, so they usually run this backdoor play. Hey, it's side OB right here. They're probably going to go zone. They go, just because they're prepared. Okay. Hey, let's on this OB under right here when they're zone. Let's run this play because we don't want to enter it to the corner because it's going to be a trap. Why? They're prepared. Okay. I don't have to worry about my staff knowing, in a tight game, who am I fouling? They know. It's on the scouting report. There's a whole page for who to foul, and who's percent. We use Just Play Solutions. It's out there for a lot of college coaches use it. That we use. That's our scouting report template. You can do quizzes on there where you embed video from Huddle, and you'll play the video, stop it, and say, okay, how are we playing this ball screen? And your player's got to answer the quiz. Anything that's interactive, they're going to do it. I mean, I mean, they're going to be on TikTok, so why not put them on Just Player Huddle for a little bit, right? And then on film-wise, edit tapes. We do a personnel breakdown first, and then we do a team breakdown, and we do a defensive breakdown, special situations breakdown. I think coaches need to spend more time scouting teams' press offense. Figure out what a team's going to do when you pressure them. I don't think coaches at the high school level spend enough time scouting press offense. That's something that I think you can steal some buckets on. And I want to know every OB they're going to run because, I think you can scheme OB under defense and get steals. I think you can scheme side out of bounds action defensively and get steals. Those are set times coming out of dead ball situations where a team is going to have tendencies, know the tendencies, and then take those tendencies away. Okay, so you got to be prepared. So to answer your question, our kids as a team watch about 45 minutes of film for an opponent. Now, our good players, because I could see who's watching and who's not on Huddle, they watch a ton of film on their own. And so I know they're doing that anyhow. Our best players right now, when we play a regional opponent, they see all the film that we have on Huddle. They've watched 2 or 3 games already on their own of the opponent. So I got a special team when it comes to that. But they know we're highly organized. They know we've spent a lot of time preparing for each opponent. And because they know that, we've got their attention. So they're going to execute the game plan.
Absolutely. I don't think that there's any doubt that when you can have your team prepared and then when your kids are preparing on their own, just like you talked about having a player-led team and you not having to be there, when the kids are watching film on their own and they're diving in and they're doing that kind of film study, then you've got something. Now, I promised you that we were going to try to keep it to an hour and 15.
You failed.
We're at an hour.
Jason's over here.
We're at an hour. I know. We're at an hour and 29. He's furiously texting me. So I'm going to wrap it up with this final question that we've been wrapping up episodes with, and that is, give me your biggest challenge in the next year, let's say, and your biggest joy that you find from being the coach at Ashland Blazer High School. So your biggest challenge, your biggest joy.
Biggest challenge is figuring out a way to continuously evolve this team. We've got a really special team. We've got 4, maybe 7 kids that'll play at the next level in our program, and at different levels. Some Power 5, some Division 3. They're all special kids. They're all come from great families. How do I fight complacency and find a way to evolve? What's our next evolution to keep us sharp and to give us another edge that we haven't previously had? What are those details involved in that? That's the challenge. And then I think if I can figure that out, I think we're a Saturday morning, and if we can be a Saturday night, which is the state championship. In Kentucky, your Final Four is Saturday morning, your state championship's that same Saturday night. So when I say it'd be a Saturday morning team, that means we're in a Final Four, okay? The best thing about here, that's a great question to end on because I love talking about this. We're the only team in Kentucky to have over 2,000 wins. First team to reach that mark. We're the only team currently to have over 2,000 wins in Kentucky high school history, which is one of the most historic high school basketball states in the country. We have the all-time wins record in the state tournament. We are number 3 in appearances in the state tournament, which is arguably the most famous high school state tournament in the country. We have won 3 state championships, played in 6 state championship games, and our fan base is unbelievable. It is still 1965 here when it comes to Friday night, you're going to the game. Whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's baseball, Friday night you're going to support the Tomcats. That's what you do. And you're un-American if you don't go. And so our community is a unique community. Ashland is where Ashland Oil, AK Steel, Armco Steel, all was right here. Those are gone now. So our community of 25,000 people here in the city of Ashland, they're reinventing themselves. We've got a strong medical community. We got a thriving small business community. We got a thriving small business community now. All kinds of different restaurants and small businesses are popping up. Entrepreneurs are flooding into our area. And it's a really cool place to be right now. And as our community is evolving, one of the things that is a constant source of enjoyment, and it's consistent, they can bet on it, is Tomcat Athletics is going to be there for them and their families to enjoy. And they value that. They don't take it for granted. So many places now across this country, they take their local high school sports teams for granted. Attendance is down. Things are live streamed. People have more things to do. Not in Ashland, Kentucky. Not in Ashland, Kentucky. They still care about it. They still love it. Now the trade-off is, this is one of those high school jobs where you don't win, you're going to lose your job, and that's a reality. So, but it's just we got a great school, great administration, great school board. It's a great place to coach high school sports and to raise a family. It really is.
It's good stuff. We can all feel the passion that you have for what you're doing and for your community and for your kids coming through the microphone. And it's great to hear. And it was a pleasure getting a chance to dig in and be able to pick your brain for an hour and a half. And I think we pulled out a lot of stuff that coaches can benefit from. And again, like we said off the top, that's the goal, is to try to be able to have a positive impact on the game of basketball. And I definitely think we did that. Before we get out, share how people can get in touch with you, find out more about you and your program, social media, give me your website, give me your podcast, and then I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
CoachMays.com is my blog. I'm very active in it in the off season, not so active during the season for obvious reasons. CoachMays.com pod is our Twitter handle. The Twitter handle is Coach Mays Pod. I want to grow that this off season. But you can have access to our podcast on CoachMays.com. And, my personal Twitter is Coach J Mays. And I'm active on Twitter, but really encourage people to listen to the CoachMays.com pod. The mission of it, Mike, as you know, is to give high school coaches that one takeaway that'll help make their program better today than it was yesterday. And that's what we strive to do with that podcast. And looking forward to an active podcasting summer.
Absolutely. Jason, cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule tonight to jump on with us. It has been a lot of fun, long overdue, and we hope that our audience enjoyed the episode. I know that Jason and I did. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks.
Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.